After the Vites conspiracy was dealt with, Matthias returned to campaign in Bohemia, but while he was away in Bohemia in 1473, Ottoman raids crossed the entire border. The Sultan had finished the war with Uzun Hasan in the east and was turning his armies westwards. The Bey of Smederevo breached the border in 1474 and sacked Varad or Rada, facing little resistance. Matthias and the majority of the army were still in Bohemia in a very uncomfortable situation, besieged by 3 allied armies in Breslau or Wroclaw in Silesia. But the large allied army was not in a good position either. It was suffering severe supply issues made worse by Matthias's light cavalry raids. The result was a stalemate with both sides losing to attrition. On the 8th of December 1474, a truce was agreed to and a long process of peace negotiations began. Matthias and his army were now free to return home and reinforce the Ottoman border. The voivode of Transylvania, Blaise Magyar, was sent to help Prince Stephen of Moldavia fend off an invasion led by the Beglerbeg of Rumelia in 1475, defeating him at the Battle of Vaslui. Even with the king's return and the defences being reinforced, the estates of the realm were not happy that the king appeared to be more concerned with Bohemia than taking the fight to the Sultan. They demanded that the king either use that very expensive mercenary army that the realm was paying for an offensive, or that he disband the Black Army, lower taxes, and rely on the nobility for his military, as was the traditional order of things. The nobility were willing to swear even more extensive military obligations to the crown if Matthias rid himself of the Black Army and lowered taxes. Matthias refused. However, during meetings of the Diet, the king was pressured to lower taxes, at least momentarily, to appease the estates. But soon after the Diet disbanded and the discontent of the estates was not concentrated, Matthias had the royal council re-implement the taxes. To appease the estates and also show other European rulers that he was indeed still the lone defender of Christendom, Matthias mounted an offensive into Ottoman territory in 1476. A few castles were captured, most importantly among them the castle of Szabadsz, which became the seat of the new Banate of Szabadsz. After its capture, Matthias had spread the word internally and externally that he had conquered a great fortress. Szabadsz was in fact a new fortress, made out of wood, and quite small. Matthias did consider taking an actual grander prize like Serbia's capital of Smederevo, but he deemed it too big of a risk. The Black Army had grown over the decades, but Matthias appears to have still considered it insufficient to take on the Sultan's forces in an offensive campaign without risking its existence. To split the Ottomans' attention in 1476, Matthias had also approved Vlad III Tepesh's attempt to recapture the Principality of Vlachia from the Ottoman puppet prince Basarab III, who had replaced Vlad's brother Radu several times. Vlad III reclaimed his throne for a moment but died in the ongoing conflict in late 1476 or early 1477. After Vlad III's demise, Basarab III... Cut that out! Basarab III recaptured the principality. Basarab III was succeeded by his cousin Basarab IV, who was succeeded by Vlad III's younger brother Vlad IV, and they were all effectively Ottoman vassals. The year 1476 also saw Matthias betrayed by another primate of the realm. Archbishop Johann Beckenschläger of Esztergom had defected to Frederick III. Matthias was left fuming as he could do nothing about it. His attentions split between Bohemia and the Ottomans. All of these events also coincided with 2 marriages. One was in late 1476 between Matthias and Princess Beatrice of Naples. This was Matthias's long-awaited recognition from other European monarchs. There's an assumption that this alliance with Naples indicated Matthias preparing to take back the Dalmatian coast from Venice, and or that Matthias had Italian ambitions. But again, there were other things that needed to be taken care of first. The other marriage had been the subject of talks between Emperor Frederick III von Habsburg and Duke Charles the Bold of Burgundy. But those talks were often halted because of the fluid diplomatic situation between Burgundy, the Swiss Confederacy, and the House of Habsburg. Duke Charles the Bold died on the 5th of January 1477 near Nancy in battle against the Swiss, leaving his only surviving daughter Mary the sole inheritrix of all his incredibly lucrative possessions. So in early 1477 a race to marry Mary started. King Louis XI of France began encroaching on Burgundian territory with the force of his armies, trying to force Mary to marry his son Charles. But Mary married her other suitor, one who, as the story goes, came with no army or money. The son and heir of Emperor Frederick III, Maximilian von Habsburg, 2 years her junior. The two fell in love, and as young lovers do, they began fighting the French together. The acquisition of Burgundy, especially the lucrative Low Countries, became a great economic boon to the House of Habsburg, and is another example of Frederick III's almost extraordinary luck that will have repercussions through the centuries. This very lucky turn of events for Frederick III coincided with a very unlucky one. A lull on the Ottoman front in 1477 allowed King Matthias to put Vienna under siege, and convinced Frederick III to reconsider his refusal to recognize Matthias as King-Elector of Bohemia. The Bohemian War ended with peace agreements achieved in Olmütz in 1478 and 1479. Matthias and Vladislav were both recognized as kings of Bohemia, but only Vladislav had the right to not call Matthias as such. Bohemia was partitioned between Bohemia proper under Vladislav and Moravia, Silesia, and Lusatia under Matthias. Bohemia could be reunited following the death of one of its two rulers. If Vladislav died first without heir, Matthias would inherit Bohemia proper. If Matthias died first, Vladislav would inherit the rest of Bohemia, but only after paying 400,000 florins to Matthias' successor. There's a funny story about that, but that's for another day. Emperor Friedrich III agreed to recognize both of them as prince-electors and promised to arrange Matthias' recognition as such from the other imperial princes. With external issues settled, King Vladislav was faced with Bohemian and domestic matters. With a Catholic king on the throne again and the Bohemian Catholic estates resurgent, the Hussites feared that their rights would be taken away and their property reclaimed by the Catholic Church. In this anti-Catholic atmosphere, another riot broke out in Prague in September of 1483. Like 64 years before, the Catholic city councillors were defenestrated and the king was forced to recognize the new Hussite councils. But this time, the situation did not escalate. The new generation of Bohemian estates had grown tired of the conflict of their parents and grandparents, and the new king was not imposing his will upon the estates. These factors made reconciliation possible. At the Diet of Kutna Hora of 1485, the estates agreed to abide by the compacts of 1436 for 31 more years. This was extended to eternity in 1512, and eternity lasted until 1567, but that's a story for another day.